Good afternoon, everyone. We are the Mindfulness, Imagery, and Effects on Sports Anxiety group. I'm Lucy Person, and these are my colleagues.
I'm Beacom.
And I'm Dahlia Cutler.
And Dahlia is going to take it away for our introduction.
All right, so to introduce our topic, we're first going to be starting with anxiety. So anxiety is something we all feel in a variety of settings. And there's been a lot of research going into exactly what the effects of anxiety are. So for performance-like settings, which can be in any type of environment, anxiety has been found to be beneficial in small amounts, while high levels of anxiety actually lead to harms in performance. So for athletes specifically who are consistently in these high stress, stress-inducing environments, there's a lot of negative anxiety there associated with these high levels. So the negative anxiety that athletes feel, we refer to as sports anxiety. So for athletes, there's been a lot of research going into the goals looking at how to optimize levels of anxiety so that athletes can reach that healthy level in order to optimize performance.
So imagery. Imagery is defined as a technique for visualizing something or how to do something or a specific behavior. It is an imagined sensory event. Some effects of imagery include decreasing stress and anxiety, decreasing cortisol levels, and increasing that sense of perceived control over your body and mind in high stress situations, and increasing your self-forgiveness. Mindfulness has varying definitions, but specifically for this study, we're looking at the modern conceptualization of it, which means it is the prescribed exercise of being mindful. It is used as a relaxation technique and trying to have peace from a wandering mind. Some effects of mindfulness: it reduces depression, anxiety, and stress. It reduces negative thoughts. There's an increased sense of control and awareness, and it actually, some studies have shown that injury occurrence is decreased, which is pretty cool.
So when you put the two together, comparing mindfulness and imagery, they overall both decrease anxiety, decrease depression, and increase self-regulatory functioning. But zooming in on mindfulness, it's going to be better for that long-term increase in emotional regulation, whereas imagery, on the other hand, is going to be better for specific performances. It's going to be better for that short-term situational events.
So our method section. So our intervention was 8 weeks long, and this was a pilot study, meaning this was the first of its kind. So we worked with the Wofford volleyball team, and we worked with all 21 of them and separated them into 3 different groups: the control group, the imagery group, and the mindfulness group. The imagery and mindfulness group were given 15-minute scripts that they were asked to listen to every day for the entirety of the 8-week intervention. And then following their intervention, we measured a couple of varied things, including the heart rate variability, which we measured prior to their home games. And then we also had their coaches code their sports performance throughout their scrimmages throughout their season. So while we did measure these things, our focus will be on the measures of anxiety and mindfulness and the way that they affect each other and the effects that they do have on the volleyball team throughout their season.
So what we hypothesized, that the interventions will show a decrease in anxiety, and specifically the mindfulness intervention will have the strongest effects. It will hopefully, we hypothesize that it will increase in measured mindfulness.
So the sports anxiety measures that we looked at were specifically self-report measures that we had the volleyball players fill out surveys for before and after the intervention. So we looked at somatic anxiety, which is the bodily reactions, the way a person feels with involving like feeling jittery, things like that. And then we also looked at cognitive anxiety, which is like the emotional aspect of anxiety, how nervous someone feels before and during an event, and then how those things continue to change throughout the intervention. Our final sports anxiety measurement was looking at confidence. So how well these athletes felt about themselves, how well they trusted their own abilities to perform throughout their matches.
And in addition to our anxiety measures, we had one mindfulness measure, which basically was a self-report of the athlete's ability to step outside of themselves, focus on their breathing, regarding their acceptance and awareness, measuring their mindfulness.
So as for our results, we looked at a repeated measures mixed model ANOVA. It looked at the pre and post intervention for time by condition, so the control, imagery, and mindfulness groups. As you can see, we do not have any statistics, but we did not find anything significant. However, we wanted to make sure that we looked at the trends of our graphs. Specifically for this measure, we did not have a great randomization. However, you can still see how great the mindfulness group did in decreasing their cognitive anxiety within these two measures, while the control group actually increased in anxiety over the time that we looked at this intervention, and imagery decreased for the CSAI, and stayed the same for the second one.
And similarly, with our somatic anxiety, we're seeing that mindfulness group still continuing to decrease in their anxiety, more so than the control and imagery, which don't show much of a change in between our pre and post. You can see here too that we have a little bit better of randomization.
So on the self-confidence scale, we kind of saw a surprising result here with mindfulness being the only condition to increase in self-confidence, while the control group remained relatively stable, both pre and post intervention, and the imagery group actually decreased in confidence over time. So continuing on for awareness, mindfulness was again the only condition to increase in awareness, both pre and post intervention, with both the control and imagery groups decreasing in awareness from pre to post.
So to give a recap of our results, we had our mindfulness group decreasing in somatic anxiety and cognitive anxiety, and then increasing for self-confidence and awareness. So you might be wondering, well, why didn't we see that decrease in anxiety for our imagery group? And although our results were not significant, we're seeing that trend for the mindfulness group that lays a good foundation for future research, and imagery for self-confidence and awareness actually decreased. So we believe that this is due to imagery being that short-term, specific behavior, event-related performance, whereas this was an 8-week intervention. Over the course of 8 weeks, that mindfulness group really increased in their emotional regulation, and they were able to decrease in their anxiety.
So moreover, to go off of Lucy, our mindfulness scale did show an increase in mindfulness and self-awareness, specifically for the mindfulness group. This shows that although we are a pilot study, there can be great implications for further investigations on how mindfulness can positively affect athletes.
So for our limitations and future directions, we were actually unaware of this at the time of creating this intervention, but the volleyball team actually has participated in imagery techniques. So this may be a confounding variable if our study and the techniques that they already do kind of coincide there. So another limitation was that we asked the participants to listen to the scripts in their respective groups every day, but we saw some inconsistencies there, of course. So each individual could be getting different doses of the intervention depending on how often they listen to the scripts, so this could lead to some differences in our results. So our study being a pilot study with only 21 athletes total and only 5 to 6 individuals in each condition by the end of the study showed that it was an underpowered study. So being a small sample size and having some of that data incomplete could be a potential limitation. And this, we believe, is why we did not see a lot of that statistical significance that we were looking for. So what we are proud of is that we do see a lot of the trends in the direction of significance. So being a pilot study, of course, we definitely want to see this intervention being used on a larger scale. We believe that there could be a lot of significance found in a bigger sports team across different sports teams, and perhaps also including different genders and also different teams and how that those effects take place.
So we'd like to give a big thank you to our advisor, Dr. Hilton, and thank you for listening to our presentation. We are now going to open up the floor for questions. Yes, Dr. Lincoln.
How many women are on the lacrosse team
27.
and track and field?
We have like 60.
60?
60 total men and
Next semester?
women. Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
What were some of like the cues on the tape? Like what would they prompt the listener to do or think?
Yeah, so the scripts that they would listen to, the mindfulness one was talking about self-awareness and really drawing attention to one's own thoughts and providing like self-awareness and just grounding techniques kind of, whereas the imagery is more focusing on imagining specific, like for the volleyball players, it was specifically for their matches, like imagining how they would respond to the ball and things like that.
And they each were 15 minutes. Yes.
What differences might you expect if it was male athletes you were testing?
I feel like with male sports, they often don't, I think that their acceptance of themselves may be, I don't know how to really say this without.
We didn't do too much research into like gender differences, but potentially because of like different like environments between like men's and women's teams, it could influence how well people are to receiving self-awareness and different like emotional regulation things. But we didn't do a lot of research into gender differences there.
I would add too that given the previous literature, mindfulness is good for anyone. I mean, I'm not on a sports team here, but I try and practice and implement it into my own lifestyle. But I would say, I think we would find similar decreases in that somatic and cognitive anxiety.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.